Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 151, The Legendary Principle. The challenge segment ended. The sprites returned to their respective areas and looked for their sprite trainers. When Reverie Butterfly flew up, it was followed by a group of flying sprites. They were dark, looking especially spectacular. The little rascal waved at the sprites. Gurgle. The sprites in the battle team gradually dispersed and returned to their respective sprite trainers. It was just that when those freshmen looked at Su Hao, there was still a shock in their eyes that couldn't be erased. He was too scary. Lu Ren's lava tortoise was still on the way back, but he was already very excited. Who is this cool guy? It's Lu Ren's thigh. He had a spot on there. Hey old Su, quickly check how many instructors have sent out invitations to you. Are there any Heavenly King level ones? What about you? Me? My wristband didn't vibrate. Lu Ren was not upset, for it was expected. Even if he had won doing nothing, his sprite was still insignificant in the battle team. However, he estimated that he would more or less be able to get a bit of credits after the school tabulated the score. The new students had won big. That was a gain. Don't mind it, don't mind it. In any case, if you perform well in the future, you can still get an invitation from the instructor. Lu Ren still had something to say. Was a mentor more important than someone with a powerful background? His desire to cozy up to someone powerful was unwavering. Su Hao then asked Li Songting and Gu Linjiao. Their wristbands didn't vibrate either. Like most freshmen. What was worse for Li Songting was that he was eliminated early on, and didn't get any credits. But he didn't care at all. He just increased his training load. Run 10 more rounds around the mountain road tomorrow. Su Hao was rendered speechless. At this point, his sprite commandeering wristband was still vibrating. He opened it and took a look. Emails popped up one after another. Fortunately, Whale Island University's special wristband does not hang easily. It was worth a 5-star review. He glanced at his inbox and casually opened a letter. It was a second-level instructor named Yezingan. When he tapped on this tutor's profile picture, he could see the introduction about him. Yezingan, second-level instructor of Whale Island University. Has been in school for 8 years. Main sprite, Cloud Water Dragon Horse, Strength King, Clear Jade Lotus. Others, Chairman of Sing & Company, Security Consultant of Red Lotus Mining Corporation. In the email, this instructor offered rather generous conditions. 1. He can provide all basic nutritional supplements for free. 2. Cloud Water Dragon will help to guide the Water Cloud Horse. 3. You can ask him for any questions whenever necessary. All the unique skills and profound meanings he has can be provided for free. The conditions were pretty good. Clearly, it was a condition specially made for him. If other students performed well, their instructors might give them nutritional supplements, unique skills, and so on, but they couldn't provide too much. To be able to answer questions once or twice a month was already pretty good. After all, the instructors were also busy. For example, this guy not only needed to hit targets such as mentoring students and teaching classes, he also has a rather large company he has to run, and even was a security consultant for a certain mining corporation. By the way, what does a mining corporation security consultant do? This instructor had many titles, but for a security consultant to be ranked behind the chairman, clearly Red Lotus Mining Group wasn't as simple as it sounded. It was just that Su Hao had never heard of it. The conditions are generous, but they aren't attractive to me. Basic nutritional supplements are just the basics. You can buy them with money. The profound meaning and unique skills are not well mastered by second-level instructors. As for the Cloud Water Dragon Horse, Su Hao shook his head. After all, he was only a second-level teacher. It was impossible for him to offer more generous conditions. Su Hao browsed through the emails one by one. Even though the email's title were already marked with the level of the instructors, out of respect, he still finished reading them. How was it, old Su? Did any Heavenly King level professors invite you? Yes. Who is it? Heavenly King Wu. Lu Ren, that one's pretty good. Heavenly King Wei. Lu Ren, this one is pretty good too. Heavenly King Yu. Lu Ren, this one is also. Wait a minute, old Su, can you finishing reading all at once? Alright. Su Hao went with the flow. Heavenly King Buletin and Heavenly King Yan, too. Lu Ren. Although Thai Su was known to be awesome. But couldn't he just have mentioned that all 5 Heavenly Kings had sent him their invitations? Then who are you choosing? Yeah, who should I choose? Su Hao looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. His expression was very conflicted. He was so conflicted that he wanted someone to hit him. The conditions given by the 5 Heavenly Kings were all very attractive. Su Hao didn't expect himself to be outstanding to such an extent. It made the Heavenly Kings show interest one after another, and he was immediately troubled. No, there's still one that can be eliminated first. It was Heavenly King Buletin. It wasn't that his conditions weren't good, but the style wasn't suitable. Yes, style. It had nothing to do with his worry that his small body wouldn't be able to take it. The other 4. Heavenly King Wu specializes in wood element. One of its main forces, trading puppet, has the psychic attribute and is good at using spiritual force. Heavenly King Wu must also have a high-level spiritual force training method in his hands. Heavenly King of the vast ocean focuses on water element, but he has also contracted a wood element fire element sprite. He's also more than enough to guide me. Heavenly King Yu focuses on the wind element and has mastered many flight profound meanings. It's also compatible with the little guys. Heavenly King Yan is famous for his poison, but she has 2 ghost element sprites. Her attainments in illusion are very high. The Heavenly Kings had also promised him a lot of resources and benefits. When a Heavenly King made a move, even if one only offered a small portion, it was still more generous than those ordinary instructors. What's even more precious are the experiences and knowledge of Heavenly King level big bosses. Knowledge was very important. No matter what the interface was unlocked, it required a clear direction and even prerequisites. Someone needed to guide the 3 sprites on how to progress to their next step. These were exactly what Su Hao lacked right now. He was just an ordinary student from an ordinary family. At most, he was a little more outstanding than the rest. There are too many options, and it's a multiple choice question. What do you think, Reverie Butterfly? Gurgle. It slowly typed out a question mark. At the same time, on the spectator stand, some instructors picked their students and left. There were also instructors who didn't care about the students and left to do other things. There weren't enough students. They just needed to send out random invitations. Heavenly King Wu sat there, looking calm. In fact, he was a little anxious. Something was wrong, this shouldn't be happening. He glanced at Muscle 2 and the others, thinking to himself, could it be that some shameless person made conditions that are against the rules? Heavenly King Wu thought. He considered adding more conditions. Should he invite him personally? But it also seemed to fall a little behind his Heavenly King level. After all, a chance encounter was different than meeting personally. He was conflicted. Suddenly, he sensed someone approaching. Heavenly King Wu looked up. Teacher, what brings you here? The other Heavenly Kings also saw the figure that suddenly appeared. The person was wearing a Chinese tunic suit, with his hands behind his back. His hair was silver white, but there weren't many wrinkles on his face. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary old man. But the Heavenly Kings all stood up, their faces filled with respect. Principal. Teacher, don't you need to guard that side? The old man sat down casually and looked towards the group of new students. He scolded jokingly, I don't go back to the school I built more than a few times a year. You're still unwilling for me to come back and take a look. I'm not. I'm raising my arms and legs to warmly congratulate teacher for your return. The old man glanced at Wu Qiuzi. I saw the freshman's challenge segment just now. Why, you want to take in a disciple? Heavenly King Wu nodded obediently. That freshman is pretty good, a little interesting. So is his sprite. It has a personality, interesting. Then, Heavenly King Wu glanced at Muscle 2 and the others, revealing a pleased look on his face. Look, with the support of the teacher, Little Sue's instructor will definitely be me. The next moment, Heavenly King Wu heard his teacher say. Then he'll be your junior from now on. Heavenly King Wu's smile suddenly froze. The teacher seemed to have said. Junior? Not a disciple? Wait, there must be something wrong. A few minutes later, looking at the old man's disappearing back view, Heavenly King Wu showed an indescribably complex expression. Logically speaking, teachers didn't have much time to teach their disciples either. Logically speaking, the mission should still be handed to him in the end. Logically speaking, this wasn't the first time this had happened. This was how casual teachers were when they took in disciples. But the student I took a fancy to is suddenly became my junior? Heavenly King Wu's expression was complex. Chapter 152, Heavenly King Domain. Su Hao never expected that he would actually meet the legendary principal. And suddenly he became the principal's disciple. In the principal's office, Su Hao looked at the old man in front of him. He wasn't tall, only about 1.6 meters tall. Wearing a Chinese tunic suit, he stood there, just like an ordinary and kind old man. But when he took a closer look, he discovered that the old man's back view was very tall, like a giant. Such a contrast made Su Hao a little dazed for a moment. Principal Yang turned around and said, I just came back from the New World, I didn't bring anything with me. I'll give you the few trinkets I picked up on the way. He reached into his pocket and felt about. Suddenly, he took out a few items that were emitting light. A concentrated version of bamboo. A black stone with flames burning on it. And a crystal in the shape of a water drop. They were all the size of a mouse. Green, red and blue balls of light floated above the old man's palm. It was clearly emitting a dazzling light, but the light seemed to be restricted by some force, only extending 20 to 30 centimeters. Its heart of attributes. Moreover, judging from the richness of the light, the energy contained in the 3 hearts of attributes in front of him was even more than the one that the little rascal had absorbed in the past. Seeing that Su Hao didn't move for a long time, the old man scolded him jokingly, just take it if I tell you to. It's not something precious, I just picked it up casually. He looked at Reverie Butterfly and the other sprites, showing a kind smile. Come, absorb the ones I just picked up while they are still fresh. Gurgle. Go. The old man no, the teacher had already said so. If Su Hao delayed any further, it would seem a little hypocritical. Of course he wanted it. The 3 sprites were even hungrier for it. Even for Reverie Butterfly that had absorbed the heart of attributes before, absorbing another one would be greatly beneficial. Research showed that the efficiency of the heart of attributes absorption was highest during the first 3 times, and it would be more disadvantageous later on. 3 hearts of attributes flew out of the old man's palm and were carefully caught by Reverie Butterfly and the others. They brought it to their mouths and spiritual force resonated. The heart of attributes the size of a mouse seemed to have turned into a ball of liquid, dissolving the moment it entered their mouth. Soft light enveloped them. I don't have much time in school, the old man said. If there's anything you don't understand, just ask your senior Wu. Although his standards are limited, it's basically enough to solve your problems. Heavenly King Wu. Teacher, can you leave me some face in front of the little junior? I'm a heavenly king after all. Even if there are specializations that don't match, answering some elite level questions is still easy. But he didn't dare to say it, and could only nod obediently. The old man then said, "When you become a master-level sprite trainer Little Wu, bring Little Sud to the new world to look for me." Heavenly King Wu continued nodding. Without saying much, the old man left. With a push of his palm, he flipped over and leaped down out of the open window of the principal's office, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Su Hao was rendered speechless. This teacher is indeed unconventional. After the principal left, Heavenly King Wu became solemn and serious again, as if he had transformed back to that pretentious Heavenly King. He coughed dryly. "Junior Su, since teacher entrusted the task to me, I will train you with the strictest requirements so that you can enter the master level as soon as possible." He paused. Of course, as teacher's disciple, master level is not enough. You have to set Heavenly King level as your goal and look further into the future, but you can't be proud. Becoming teacher's disciple only gives you better room for development. How much you can really achieve depends on yourself. I understand, Senior Wu. Su Hao wasn't used to it. Fortunately, Heavenly King Wu didn't have any imposing attitude in front of the principal or teachers. This made him feel like he was much closer to his age. "Oh right, have I seen Senior Wu somewhere before? Good that you understand." Heavenly King Wu nodded in satisfaction. As expected of the student, he took a fancy to even if he became a junior. This attitude of being able to abstain from arrogance and impatience was the rarest. Countless geniuses became complacent, lost, and gradually faded into the crowd after achieving a little. He continued, "In the path of sprite trainers, only when one reaches the Heavenly King level can they be considered to have high-level battle power. A monarch-level sprite can crush many extraordinary ones. If it's supported by a sprite trainer, it's even easier." Supported. That's right, he said. Heavenly King level sprite trainers are fundamentally different from the previous levels. Have you heard of a term called Heavenly King domain? Su Hao shook his head cooperatively. Although he had indeed never heard of it. Heavenly King Wu was very satisfied. He didn't understand. Only when he didn't understand would his value be shown. It was time to showcase his deep knowledge as a Heavenly King Senior. The so-called Heavenly King domain refers specifically to a certain ability possessed by a Heavenly King. For example, my domain is wood. More specifically, it's the growth of wood element. Watch carefully. As Heavenly King Wu spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at a pot of plants in the office. No emerald green light emerged from his hand, but the green plants in the pot suddenly grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while, the whole green plant grew 2 to 3 times larger, its leaves lush. The whole potted plant looked a little unbalanced in its tiny pot. It was bigger above and smaller below. A gust of wind blew over. The potted plant swayed and fell down with a thud. Heavenly King Wu. It was all an accident. He called the trading puppet to organize it and continued. The main function of the Heavenly King domain is not the little bit of ability shown on the outside, but to support sprites. For example, if I had a pseudo-monarch rank wood element sprite, under the support of my domain, it would have the power to fight a real monarch rank. If I had a monarch rank sprite, the effect would be even greater. Not only that, the Heavenly King domain can also help sprites break through. For many at the master level, his trump card may have been stuck at the pseudo-monarch level for 10 to 20 years, but after he becomes a Heavenly King, he can perhaps be able to nurture his second main force to the Heavenly King level in 2 to 3 years, of course, only when the domain is compatible. This is the power of sprite trainers. Su Hao understood. These were secrets. He understood now why so many Heavenly King tier main forces were of the same element. And why was it that even though it was clearly very difficult for sprites to break through to the monarch rank, many veteran Heavenly Kings had a monarch rank team that could team up to fight? Su Hao asked some more questions. For example, why most Heavenly Kings used certain attributes as their domain? That's a good question. Heavenly King Wu swept his hair and said, using attributes as a domain is the most direct and also the most helpful choice for sprites to break through. My wood element, heavenly king of the vast ocean's water element, heavenly king of the wind's wind element, and so on. But there are also domains that don't use attributes. For example, Muscle Heavenly King Buletin. His title is Martial Arts. He's good at physical fighting, and has his own unique views on training Sprites physiques. His Heavenly King domain is in close quarter combat. Sprites must be proficient in close quarter combat, and physical fighting in order to break through with the help of his domain. Another example is Heavenly King Yan. She looks like a ghost element Heavenly King, but she isn't. She focuses on poison, illusion poison, fire poison, wood poison, and so on. The style and direction of a Heavenly King domain depends on your first sprite to break through to monarch rank. You have to work hard towards Heavenly King level, so you can also start to consider which field will be your direction. Of course, Heavenly King level isn't limited to just one domain, but those are too far away to consider now. Chapter 153, School Team and Special Training Camp. Heavenly King Wu's words were better than studying thinking about it carefully, he hadn't studied for many years. But these words did clear up his vision, giving him a clearer understanding of the path of a sprite trainer. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Su Hao asked everything he needed to ask and could think of. From time to time, he heard ding-dong intelligence points increment prompts. At this moment, the elite-level Reverie Butterfly was the first to absorb the heart of attributes. The emerald green light faded, and the little rascal returned to its normal appearance. Its ability didn't increase much. What the heart of attributes improved was its potential. The effect of the modification was subtle. For a long time from now, its rate of improvement would increase. The little rascal licked its lips. There was no lingering taste. The huge heart of attributes was gone like that. It was in pain. The dazed crow and the dumb unicorn didn't understand, but it did. With one swallow, the items worth at least $10 million were gone. How many jobs would it have to take to earn it back? Gurgle. Looking at Reverie Butterfly's big watery eyes, Su Hao knew what it was thinking. This little butterfly was clearly very talented, but it was too greedy. He didn't know how it became like this. It was said that sprites resembled humans. Wait. Su Hao sank into deep thought. Su Hao had no idea regarding which direction he wanted to progress into the Heavenly King domain Heavenly King Wu, Senior Wu had brought up. After all, it was a long-term goal. It could be considered, but it was only a consideration. After leaving the principal's office, Heavenly King Wu brought Su Hao to his manor. In the distance, Su Hao saw trees 20 to 30 meters tall growing outside the manor. They were lined up in rows, giving off a very neat and tidy feeling at first glance. The closer they got, the more orderly they looked. It was as if every tree had been measured. Even the way they grew were similar. After passing through the woods, they arrived at the manor building filled with vines growing all over it. The Heavenly King of the Woods lived in a place filled with trees everywhere. There was nothing wrong with that. I'll bring you to meet your disciple nephew. If you encounter any trouble in school in the future, you can look for him. As he spoke, Su Hao saw the figure in front. It was a tall boy who looked sunny and cheerful. Not far from the boy were two sprites doing tree planting work. They were standing upright, and their wool was draped over their bodies like a white robe. There were also some mysterious green patterns on their robes, and they held a cane that looked like a dead tree root in their hands. There were eye-catching curved goat horns on their heads, and green sprouts grew on the white hair between the two horns. They grew neatly. Goat horn immortal. The final evolved form of the grass sheep sprite, the intermediate stage was sheep sculler. The two goat horn immortals were about the same size, both slightly shorter than the adult male, but Su Hao noticed their differences. The green sprouts on the top of one of the horn immortals' head were growing more exuberantly than on the other. That one was monarch rank. The other was an extraordinary. The monarch rank goat horn immortal seemed to be guiding trees to grow step by step. With a met, it raised its dead wood cane. Not far away, the sapling buried in the soil emerged from the ground and rapidly germinated. In the blink of an eye, it grew into a large tree that was 20 to 30 meters tall. The lush leaves blocked the sunlight. It was no different from the other trees around it. This. Su Hao wanted to complain, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, the other goat horn immortal also moved. It controlled the sapling's growth outwards. Its growth was slower, but it was still very fast. When the tree was halfway grown, the monarch rank goat horn immortal frowned and hit the back of the other goat horn immortal's hand with its cane. Mrh. It expected better from it. Su Hao could tell from its tone, but he was still confused. He had to poke Reverie Butterfly and ask softly, "What are they talking about?" Gurgle, gurgle. Su Hao fell silent. It turned out that the way the tree grew wasn't right, and it slanted a few centimeters. He knew it, no wonder the trees here were so neat. So there was a monarch rank supervisor. But he still didn't quite understand. That's cultivating an elemental control unique to extraordinary level, Heavenly King Wu said. The tall boy heard the voice and turned around. "Teacher, is this the junior? He's your little senior uncle." The boy was confused. He, who was about to greet them, froze immediately. Heavenly King Wu said, "His name is Zhang Zaihoki. He's in his 4th year of university this year. He's the strongest disciple among my undergraduates. His standard is just so-so. That girl there is from the same batch as you. Her name is Yu Xiuxiu." It was only then that Su Hao noticed a girl standing under the shade of a tree not far away. Wearing round glasses, she looked ordinary and would be overlooked if one wasn't paying attention. On the other hand, the sprite beside her looked familiar. "Gurgle!" the little rascal called out. Killer Mantis, which was sprawled on the tree, flew in front of the little rascal. "Kaka, kaka." It was the Killer Mantis, who was the team leader of Butterfly's battle team and had a good battle record. A moment later, he introduced himself. Zhang Zaihoki understood. Su Hao was actually the disciple of the legendary principal. Oh my god! Master! He couldn't say it out loud. It was also somewhat difficult for Su Hao to call a student older than him his disciple nephew. It made him seem too old. After a long while of stammering, he finally decided to speak comfortably. They spoke as classmates. Heavenly King Wu gave Zhang Zaihoki a few words of advice, and then said to Su Hao, "Zaihoki is one of the main players in the school team. You know about the school team and the high school league, right? No matter which Sprite university it is, the annual high school league is of utmost importance. Why? Because the high school league is a test of a school's standard and results, one of the results displayed in front of outsiders. If you get a good ranking in the high school league, not only will you attract more outstanding students, but most importantly, the annual grants from Dragon Nation to the various Sprite universities will be based on the results of the league as the main reference." He paused for a moment. "Let's put it a little further. In recent years, many strong people graduated from Sprite universities. The standard of the high school league can almost reflect the standard of the new generation of strong people in our Dragon Nation in the coming years. Not only are the higher UPS in the country watching, even those overseas are watching." Su Hao recalled. Speaking of which, when he just transmigrated, the headlines he first saw were related to the high school league. During that batch, Fiery Bird University defeated Dragon City University and won the championship. In that case Whale Island University was just a second runner-up then. The previous batch, the batch that just ended. It was the college entrance examination, so Su Hao didn't pay attention to it. Heavenly King Wu didn't pay much attention to it either. He thought about it and asked, "Did our school win the championship last year?" "No," Zhang Zaihoki said. "But we were second place. Third place in the cohort 2 years back, second place in the previous cohort. This won't do, it's too lousy." Heavenly King Wu was dissatisfied. Back then, the cohort I led crushed Dragon City University and Fiery Bird University. Teacher, hasn't the high school league only been held for 6 years? He muttered softly. Heavenly King Wu's eyes widened as he said, aren't there other comparisons without the high school league? Humph. In any case, you're already in your 4th year. You must win the championship this year. Then, he looked at Su Hao, his expression much gentler. There are 5 main players and 5 substitutes in the school team. Apart from that, there's also a special training camp with a quota of 100 people. The special training camp is where the elite of the school gather. As long as you enter the special training camp, you can get at least 300 credits every month, as well as other hidden benefits. The higher your ranking, the more the credits rewarded. The top 10 of the special training camp will become members of the school team. My request for you is to enter the special training camp before the end of your 1st year. When it's the 2nd year of university and time for the next high school league, I hope that your ability will be sufficient to enter the school team. Chapter 154, Sprites Shortcomings. The 2 of you, follow me. Heavenly King Wu said to Su Hao and Yu Xiaoxiu. He brought them to the large training field behind the manor. The whole training field was open air, surrounded by a thick, grayish-white stone wall. There were pillars on the wall, inserted diagonally towards the training field. He waved his hand, calling the trading puppet to come forward. Ask your respective sprites to use their unique skills against the trading puppet, so that I can understand your sprite's current strength in detail. Yu Xiaoxiu's 2 sprites were the elite-level Killer Mantis and the entry-level Leaf Blade Warrior. In a low voice, she made her command, and the 2 sprites speedily leaped forward. Traces of metallic luster appeared on Killer Mantis's sickle, followed by circles of green light spinning in the air. Its figure flashed as it slashed, slashing out 6 times in an instant. The Leaf Blade Warrior's attack was mediocre in comparison. All the attacks landed on the invisible psychic shield in front of the trading puppet. In the blink of an eye, it was absorbed, and not even a trace of aftershock dissipated. Then, the 2 sprites started displaying other unique skills. Heavenly King Wu finished watching and nodded slightly before shaking his head. Their attack strength is sufficient, but they lack other adaptive capabilities. Secondly, the Killer Mantis's attack caused too much of a commotion. Do you still remember how its sneak attack had failed during the challenge segment? Thirdly, instead of slashing 6 times in a row, it's better to combine all 6 slashes into one and unleash the strongest slash. Only then can the battle be set in stone. As he spoke, he pressed a few dots on the sprite commandeering wristband. I've transmitted a profound meaning of Tremor Blade to you. Study it well with your sprite. Also, the suggestion I gave you for the 3rd sprite is to contract a control-type sprite. Then, he looked at Su Hao. Come on. Reverie Butterfly used granule machine gun, multiple energy balls, string shot cutting, psychic shock, double illusion scenes, 5 senses control, and so on. Flaming Cloud Crow used Flaming Claw, Flaming Fist, Flaming Slash, and its final killing move to utilize the instantaneous hell-killing array after entering Flaming Feather form. The light of its blade and the shadow of fire were like a dream. As for the Water Unicorn Beast, it took cloud steps and displayed its unique skill of treading waves. A water path appeared behind it, water dragons roared around it. It rushed up. Bang! It bounced back. However, its power was comparable to Big Sister and Brother Crow. Yu Xiaoxiu, who didn't have much of a presence, was stunned. 3 sprites well, apart from Water Cloud Horse, both the other 2 had a lot of killer moves. In the challenge segment, these were not even shown at all. He defeated the older students by only using strategy. Too strong. She peeked over and lowered her head again. She stood there without much presence and quietly observed the few sprites. After watching Su Hao's sprites demonstration, Heavenly King Wu looked very calm on the surface. He had to be calm. Otherwise, How could he maintain a dignified image as a senior, and showcase the knowledge and experiences of a heavenly king? Calm down. He coughed dryly as his brain worked quickly. He started with the simple water unicorn beast. I can see that you are very right to nurture it as a mount. Of course, its battle power can also be strengthened well. I've transmitted a profound meaning of stacking waves to you. Go back and take a look at it. He paused for a moment, giving himself more time to think, and then calmly commented on the next sprite. Your flaming cloud crow's attack and speed are impeccable. It is also very familiar with the usage of feather substitute, and its life-saving abilities are strong, but of course there are still some areas that are not perfect. For example, its flaming feather stance can be considered a semi-finished secret manual. It needs to be infused with suitable profound meanings. I'll provide you with the two profound meanings, burning flame and flaming, but you have to figure out which one is more compatible by yourself. Of course, I suggest you go to the library to look for some reference books. It takes time and opportunity to perfect a secret manual, there's no need to rush. Now on to your reverie butterfly. Heavenly King Wu paused. Originally, he wanted to give pointers on the construction of the illusion. After all, illusions were very much inherited and it was rather difficult for him to figure it out himself. Who would have thought? From the information reflected by the trading puppet, the elusive abilities and illusions of Reverie Butterfly were already very complete. He couldn't think of any shortcomings after all, he wasn't the Heavenly King of Illusion. Isn't Little Su a student with an ordinary background? How did he construct the illusion in such detail? Heavenly King Wu analyzed rapidly and finally found the key point. He said, your Reverie Butterfly is strong and has many methods, but it lacks real killer moves. Su Hao mused over this question. Indeed. The little rascal was very proficient in several illusion unique skills. When dealing with entry-level sprites, it could defeat them with a single look. The spiritual force consumed was also very little. However, against those of the same level it was impossible to kill them in one hit. They require the basis for high-level illusion techniques. Then, he heard Senior Wu say. Of course, actual combat is a team battle. Your problem isn't serious, but you have to try your best to make up for it. There's a unique skill called Spiritual Explosion here. When sprites exert the influence of illusion, even if they break free, they can leave secret imprints in their minds. These imprints can deepen the influence of illusions, or they can explode in one go. It's just that this unique skill is harder to learn. Apart from that, I recommend your Reverie Butterfly to learn another move, Spiritual Perception. It can sense all life forms with spiritual force. In the wild, in the New World, scouting abilities are as important as life-saving abilities. Heavenly King Wu said a lot. Finally, he raised a question that he was more worried about. As a new form sprite, there's no other way for your Reverie Butterfly to go, no reference items. You have to work hard and pay more attention to related information. The news of the principal's disciple didn't spread widely. In the eyes of most students, Su Hao, who had caused a big commotion during the freshman challenge segment, was Heavenly King Wu's student. That was already very impressive. With a senior like Heavenly King Wu, apart from being able to get many unique skills and profound meanings for free, having someone to guide him, having a sparring partner, having and so on, he was still an ordinary freshman, living an ordinary life. Fighting for credits. Having a headache over which classes to choose. The credits awarded for the challenge segment have already been distributed. 2,000 credits were said to be the highest reward. It was even fought for by Senior Wu. In terms of the curriculum, Senior Wu recommended the elective course of Instructor Peng's Highlands Illusion Ability Application and Instructor Sun Jiaoang's Fire Arts. As for the rest, I'll look around a bit more. What we're coveting isn't the credits, but knowledge and intelligence points. The official classes started on September 1st. Su Hao glanced at the timetable. Among the compulsory classes, there were several including the moral cultivation and legal basics of thought, the history of the Dragon Nation's sprite and philosophy, details of the new world, sprite trainer levels, etc. He didn't have much time to learn. But he couldn't escape. At most, he could apply for an advanced assessment and be exempted after. Of course, the first few compulsory classes were unavoidable and were the most important classes. Su Hao understood. Sprite trainers were a group of people who had mastered super-specific powers. If they didn't strengthen ideological education and psychological counseling, in the case that any of them went crazy, their destructive power would be much greater than those who held guns. So there were also very few social training classes. It wasn't that those with a bit of ability were qualified to start classes and teach. He used the desktop computer provided by the villa to browse through the information. Suddenly, his cell phone vibrated, and the screen lit up. He saw Lu Ren's crazy "What the FCK, what the FCK? What the heck?" He swiped the screen. He opened the group of 4 little heavenly kings and saw Lu Ren, "What the F***ck, Song Ting was also accepted as a disciple by the heavenly king of martial arts just now. Su Hao was rendered speechless. What the F***ck? What just happened? Chapter 155, Mission Platform. Time, August 27th August 30th. Location, Whale Island University Ring-Shaped Mountain. Character, Li Songting, Weighted State. Event, completing the 10-round long-distance run around the ring-shaped mouth, triggering an opportunity. It was probably because Li Songting was sprinkling his youth under the setting sun, and had encountered a similarly sweat-sparkling muscle heavenly king Bulletin. During the challenge segment, Li Songting lost too quickly. The one who ended up in the arena was just a sprite, which was inconspicuous among the group of new students. Until recently. After Su Hao was done listening, he thought about it carefully. It seemed unexpected, but also reasonable. Songting's physical fitness is abnormal, but at least his physique is within the range of a normal person. Now that he's taken in as Heavenly King Bulletin's disciple and undergoing special training under Heavenly King Bulletin, after a period of time, will he? Su Hao looked up and imagined a random day in a few months. The doorbell of the villa rang. Li Songting's hot-blooded and impassioned voice came from outside. Su Hao, let's have a battle. The moment he opened the door, a huge shadow casted down. He had no choice but to look up. The head, it was still the familiar head, but the body had become the demonic muscular body of Heavenly King Bulletin's bloodline. His huge body had explosive granite-like muscles. A normal headwear was worn above. Suddenly, he grinned, revealing his shiny teeth. Terrifying. It was too scary. He hurriedly shook off the incongruous scene in his mind. Lu Ren was a little envious. Although he said that he wanted to cozy up to Su Hao, his conviction remaining firm. But wouldn't it be awesome to have a Heavenly King level instructor who could get him so many unique skills and resources too? Old Su, do you think I'll have a chance to meet Heavenly King Bulletin when I go for a run at the ring-shaped mountain? Su Hao was rendered speechless. He paused and typed a line of words. Firstly, you will need to run 10 rounds around the ring-shaped mountain while bearing a heavy weight on your back. Secondly, you need to turn your lava tortoise into immortal turtle and master the basic physical fighting techniques. Then, Lu Ren or2. He decided to hug old Su's thigh, cozying up to him obediently. University life was relatively free. The compulsory classes were strict, and skipping classes affected the final assessment, but the school hours were actually much less than those in ordinary universities. All the compulsory lessons were held in the first week. They were done in one breath, allowing the students to have time to complete some extracurricular missions. During the compulsory class sprite trainer levels, the whole classroom was about the size of a small auditorium. The contents of the textbooks were shown on the huge screen. The instructor even specially prepared a row of sprites. Moss turtle, thorny turtle, 10,000 vine turtle, another 10,000 vine turtle. Little seashell, water-treading snail, fairy snail, another fairy snail. They corresponded to non-entry level, entry level, elite level, and extraordinary level respectively. Using the same type of sprite as a comparison, it allowed the students present to have a deep and thorough understanding of the levels of sprite trainers and sprites. The mark of an official sprite trainer is having an entry-level sprite who can learn sprite commandeering, protection. This means that sprite trainers have a certain level of self-protection ability. The threat of ordinary firearms and weapons has already been greatly reduced. Elite-level sprite trainers can utilize greater extents of sprite commandeering. There are important abilities such as sprite commandeering, same frequency, sprite commandeering, spiritual connection, and so on. Starting from elite level, there are more tactics for combat and battles without rules that can be arranged. Master-level sprite trainers. Unlike the other compulsory classes, the first-year students in the department listened very seriously to this one. Their sprites were also quiet. Lu Ren, who was sitting at the side, even started to write in his notes. "Old Su, don't you need to write this down?" Su Hao pointed at his head. "Lu Ren, I shouldn't have asked." At first, Su Hao also listened, but he discovered that they were all knowledge that he already knew and couldn't provide intelligence. He looked to the side. Reverie Butterfly was playing with its cell phone quietly. The Flaming Cloud Crow was quietly daydreaming thinking. Water Unicorn Beast it was quietly and strenuously learning words of the language. As the only one in the Su's sprite team who couldn't write and couldn't understand Dragon Nation's language, that wouldn't do. He had to make up for it. Apart from Reverie Butterfly, the other two had to be cultured sprites as well. Su Hao simply opened the sprite commandeering wristband. He entered the mission platform and started flipping through it. It was generally divided into 3 sections. Internal School Mission, Domestic Mission, New World Mission. As a student of Sprite universities, his university life definitely was heavily intertwined with mission platforms. If he didn't do missions, there won't be credits. Without credits, he wouldn't get resources. The school's purpose was, only with effort can there be gains. Even though I just got 2,000 credits, I'm still poor. He had used 1,000 credits to purchase a flowing fire seed for the Flaming Cloud Crow to fuse with. It would take about a month to completely fuse. When the time comes, I shall bring Flaming Cloud Crow to test out the data. Then, he spent another 200 credits to order a scale nourishment set meal for the Water Unicorn Beast. After buying some facilities for a longer cultivation period, treasures that could increase the basic attributes of sprites, and so on, he only had 300 credits left out of the original 2,000. It was used to maintain his livelihood. Su Hao opened the school's mission section. Internal school missions were usually the easiest. This was probably what freshmen could take on. School Cleaning 001. Mission Introduction, clean the fallen leaves from East Park Road to West Park Road. Requirements, sprites who master wind element unique skills, time limit of 3 hours. Reward, 2 credits. Remarks, during the cleaning process, if you damage the plants or facilities along the way, the reward will be cancelled. Serious damage caused will result in deducted credits. Su Hao recalled for a moment. He seemed to have really seen students who commanded their sprites to clean up. The hurricane picked up the fallen leaves and threw them all into the trash can. Don't think it's easy. The real test was the sprite's control over the wind. If there was even the slightest mistake, it was very likely that what would be swept up wasn't the fallen leaves, but the neatly trimmed bushes and flowers. That would be a tragedy. In contrast, there was also the task of pruning the bushes. And the tree planting mission. The location is in Area A of the instructor area. Wait, was it a mission from Senior Wu? How much does Senior Wu like planting trees? Most of the missions in the mission system were issued by the school. A small number of them were issued by the instructors. For example, the tree planting mission given by Senior Wu. Occasionally, the other instructors would also issue some temporary recruitment missions. Laboratory Assistant Mission 003. Mission Introduction. Assist Instructor Tang Hudang in completing the research experiment on the effect of the vine demon on the growth of 57 types of flowers. Requirements: entry-level Sprite cultivator license, interview required. Mission reward: 3.5 credits per day, guidance from Instructor Tang Hudang. Note: time released, 3 hours ago. Spots claimed, 4/5. Advanced level Sprite cultivators are indeed popular everywhere. However, only in prestigious schools can one casually find a group of official Sprite cultivators as assistants. The ratio of students from Whale Island University, Sprite Trainer School, and Sprite Care School was approximately 8:2. But even for students of the Sprite commandeering specialization, they had to pass the entry-level Sprite cultivator license before graduating from their 4th year of university. If it was a cultivation specialization, the starting point of graduation would be a mid-level Sprite cultivator. There were also a lot of other academic requirements. Su Hao scanned across. Looking for trouble. Sprite trainers are still the easiest, being reckless is enough. Su Hao continued to look. Well, school students can also issue missions on the platform. Training Mission 012. Mission Introduction. Assist the Sprite, Punching King Kangaroo, in completing the initial comprehension of Sleeping Fist. Requirements: Sprites with hypnotic properties, elite level and above. Reward: 16 credits. The requirements for these missions were considered low, and there was no danger involved. Students chose missions according to their sprites. It was just that the credits were also low. However, many domestic missions are dangerous. They can only be received after passing the assessment.